In the world of mass media, no one person is more associated with the term conspiracy theory than the broadcaster Alex Jones. Once when asked about the subject of Sasquatch, Alex Jones responded, "If there was a 1,000-pound monkey running around in the woods, we would all know about it." It is often stated that the term conspiracy theory came to prominence around the time of the assassination of President John Kennedy. Through the prose of William Shakespeare, the assassination of Julius Caesar historically was a conspiracy. Hamlet, the Danish prince, was a conspiracy theorist, the mad prince driven crazy by thoughts of conspiracy. It also happened that Hamlet was correct in what he was thinking. Perhaps Alex Jones is also correct if what Sasquatch is not a monkey. Friend of Alex Jones's and broadcaster Joe Rogan is a man whose voice is listened to more than any other voice in human history. Every broadcast of his receives as many as 50 million hearings. Joe Rogan was once a man very interested in the subject of Bigfoot, Sasquatch.
I want Bigfoot to be real. I've always wanted it to be real. The problem is the people looking at it also want it to be real. There's some interesting things. There's some interesting things in terms of like dermal ridges they found on footprints.
Unable to come to a satisfactory conclusion on the subject, his determination was what really would make sense if there is something otherworldly, interdimensional, supernatural, or otherwise uncommon about this creature.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
Why is the US Congress suddenly interested in bringing out information about undiscussed flying technologies if it's not to distract from the post-COVID world? This information has been with the government for decades. A post-COVID world, a world of lockdowns, forced medications, a public much more open to the notion of secretive organizations having a hidden hand in the unfolding of world events. Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, people who have had a massive effect on mass consciousness and the changing of the mainstream narrative. The major players in this area of cryptozoology in our time are perhaps less understood and less well known than Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, although may be seen as more consequential to human history when the final chapter is written. Dr. Melba Ketchum, David Paulides, Bob Gimlin, Wes Germer.
Thousands of hours to create, and they defaced it in seconds.
Although there are several people prominent in this particular area of cryptozoology, there are also people whose work may be relevant to the subject. One such person is Rosa Corey, a forensic land examiner, a self-described lesbian and leftist liberal from California. Rosa Corey's work brought her into contact with a conspiracy that she could hardly believe and didn't fit in with her paradigm of the world. But when she found it, she adjusted her worldview to bring it into line with what she saw as the reality that was unfolding before her.
People assume that we're going to have tin hats on for the rest of the show. Can you explain to them a little bit about what Agenda 21 is, the primer for people who don't know?
Sure. Well, you know, it's not like Area 51 or Catch 22. It's a real plan. It was signed on to in 1992 by the United States and 178 other countries. It is the United Nations plan. It's the action plan for sustainable development. It is the plan to inventory and control all land, water, minerals, plants, animals, construction, means of production, education, energy, information, and human beings in the world.
Rosa Koire became an activist in this issue, an activist to support people to live in rural areas and grow their own food, to live independently and off the grid. When she discovered the United Nations plan to do the exact opposite to that for all people. Sadly, and some people think strangely, Rosa died on May the 30th, 2021 at the age of 65 years old.
And I'm the author of Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21. And, I'm always talking about how we have to be the resistance, and what does that look like? I think we need to start thinking about what the resistance looks like.
What Rosa discovered through Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 is the manner in which the United Nations, an open conspiracy to manage the entire world's resources. One aspect of the 2021 and 2030 agendas from the United Nations that Rosa Koire was investigating was the Wildlands Project. The Wildlands Project intends to return areas of rural countryside to human no-go areas, such as the power of ecological conservation in our age. If a rare bird, newt or frog is found in an area, it can stop a building construction. In the 1970s, a US Army field manual released information about Sasquatch within its pages. As people, we all care about our health, and yet that can be used against us by printing COVID numbers in the news, in warnings every day. Just as our good sense about our health can be used against us, so can our good sense about wanting to look after our environment, our ecology and the planet. In fact, our views can be so coloured and distorted by what we care about and used against us, that our views and understanding of the world around us may not even be real. How many of us believe that due to mankind's disregard for the environment, we have destroyed all the forests on the planet, or we are about to? And yet when we look into the actual figures of forested areas, what do we find? The land mass of Russia, a massive country, almost half covered in forest. China, the fifth of the landmass of China is covered in forest. A third of Norway covered in forest. Almost 70% of Sweden covered in forest. Almost 40% of Canada. Russia with its Yeti, China with its Yeren. As a modern people, we are little more than living in a clearing in the forest, but we have no sense of it. In the UK, between 8 and 12% of the land is developed for urban and suburban conurbation. You can get a sense of this sometimes if you take a long distance train journey and stare out the window and see the land around you, but living within the towns and cities, we don't really have a sense of this. When you examine the USA by state and territory, you have to get almost halfway down the list to find a state or territory that's less than 50% covered in forest. This is not the apprehension of the average person. Crazy plan by a Saudi prince to show off to his globalist pals about how he's going to build a line city through the desert to contain and control the populace. This Orwellian nightmare of a city is meant to house or imprison 9 million residents. It's much more like something out of a dystopian Hollywood movie. The secret behind the city's real design is to stop people from using their own transport. The land they intend to build this monstrosity on is the ancestral homeland of the Hawatat tribe. People are actually being forced away from their homeland, forced off this land for this project. Dr. Melba Ketchum, a highly qualified veterinarian and geneticist, To examine Dr. Ketchum's curriculum vitae, it seems that you almost need a qualification in its own right to do that. Dr. Melba Ketchum was contracted by the US government to try and help determine any genetic remains within the World Trade Center debris. In one of the most important scientific breakthroughs in our time, Dr. Melba Ketchum mapped the Sasquatch genome, having received over 100 samples in her study. When she presented these findings in a scientifically appropriate way in order to present a paper, the scientific community completely collapsed. That the science is good so long as the science says what we expect it to say.
Then when they say that there's some human or primate DNA, it's always contaminated.
Thankfully, Dr. Melba continues her work, supported by good faith actors such as the How to Hunt guide Steve Isdale. So whilst we can see there absolutely are conspiracies abroad in the world, such as ones that killed Julius Caesar, ones that Hamlet uncovered in the Shakespeare play, such as the conspiracy that likely killed President Kennedy, not everything is a conspiracy, and while there may be conspiratorial elements to control the world through various organisations such as the United Nations, our institutions can fail by themselves, and we can fail under our own apprehensions. David Paulides, ex-law enforcement officer, has probably done more to emphasise and outline a conspiracy in this area than probably anyone else. And his successful book series, Missing 411, and the 2 films associated with them outline these facts of how the park services in the US have acted to cover up the amount of people that have gone missing and the unusual circumstances in which they've gone missing, which all point a certain way. We do have ourselves a rather comical version of what we imagine would happen if a body of a Sasquatch or cryptid were brought in. How this would somehow change things. But what would happen? We'd take it directly to the television station, bypassing all bureaucracy. You say you found a station that was prepared to broadcast that directly, so that nobody could stop it. What would happen when it went out? Oh, that's definitely real. That's not real. That's not real. What is it? Nobody would know. Take it to the police. The police wouldn't know what it was. They would bring in veterinarians, and veterinarians wouldn't have probably never seen it, so they don't know what it is either. So this rather comical idea that if we have a body, where would it go? It would go, whether it was through the police or the television station, to an expert, and eventually the veterinarians wouldn't know what it was, and it would go to a zoological society. Eventually it's going to find its way into government bureaucracy, where it's going to disappear.
We have top men working on it right now. Who? Top men.
Having a body means nothing. In fact, having the genetics is far more important.
I just want people to understand this is a serious study.
People have chosen to they don't want to believe it. They can't find in their minds to believe these things exist.
Along with the videos, the group also presented blood, hair, and a DNA sample reviewed by 11 independent laboratories and universities, including New York University, University of Texas Southwestern, and the North Louisiana Crime Lab. According to lead researcher Melba Ketchum, they didn't know what they were testing. I have one email from a tester saying, "What have you done? Discovered a new species?"
Even in the knowledge of this by people who are aware that there are government agents who suppress this information, still push for things like this, even though they are aware themselves. They don't have the sense to come to terms with their own logic. In the film The Skunk Ape Lives by Stacey Brown, in recent years there was a report of park rangers who killed a cryptid, a creature like a Bigfoot-like creature, and they were taken by some kind of government agents to make sure that they never spoke about it. And in other parts of the country, in the USA, similar things have happened in different states. So it's an overarching body, a federal agency, or some overarching body that has the power to initiate those protocols, to even be ready to bring put those protocols in place. So bringing a body into somewhere will do nothing. With all due respect to people who have had all kinds of value, I think Grover Krantz and such people, they may not have come to understand the logic, or neither the wider understanding of the powers that be and how they intend to rule the planet and control the resources of the planet, and how important a topic and a realization such as Sasquatch would be to them. The first part of this series dealt with what Sasquatch is in its origin. Sasquatch was created by one of the kings of the ancient world, who it appears had a determination that was thwarted by dispersing people. So in that case, it could be estimated that the gathering of people together and the controlling of people under one rulership was part of the intent then, because to thwart him was to disperse the people at the Tower of Babel. Now, at a time when, again, through institutions like the United Nations and the European Union, which is built like the Tower of Babel, is built to be a representation of it, is once again trying to have an overarching authority over the entire world, as mentioned by Rosa Corias, to control all the resources in the world. So might we now consider that a creation from that time, from that king, might once again come into play? What issue could be used for frightening people into the cities and onto the grid? What issue could be used to grant land rights, rights of natural habitat, and quote-unquote ecological rights, evolutionary rights? What two sitting US senators have had a Sasquatch sighting? What secret technologies might the governments possess in order to move cryptids around and frighten people into the cities? What issue would have an entire fringe community around the world, naturally opposed to governments, come together to support the government for exposing this issue, to admit the issue is reality?
The video is about 5.5 minutes long. I trimmed it down to 3 minutes just to sort of capture the highlights of it. So there it is. You can see we're looking at this little either marsupial or primate. I'm gonna say primate, kind of hopping around here. He's on a leash of some kind. And just judging by the architecture, I can tell you that this is not in the United States. I think that you'll hear their language. Yeah, it's either Russia or maybe one of the stand countries. There's a hand for scale. You can tell this is a really small creature. And it, like I said, it skips right to this, and look at that human face. I mean, wow. It's really hard to say that this is some sort of monkey. It's definitely not fake. I mean, with the amount of movement and the eye movement and everything, there's no way. I don't buy that this is some sort of CGI or puppet of any kind. There's a look at the hands. Pretty big considering the size of the creature. Got a lot of fur, a lot of hair. Imagine this guy 8 feet tall and, 10 years older. He seems really docile too. Like he was kind of hopping around, but now looks like he's going down for a nap or something. I think this is pretty much the gist of it for the rest of the video. See, he's kind of getting sleepy there. You see his eyes kind of closing a little bit, but this is really it. Now, what sucks about this video is that there's no explanation at all. No anything. Like I said, it was just posted by one group 5 years ago. It got lost on YouTube, and that's the end of it. So I'm posting it here to you. You guys tell me what you know about it. What do you think about it? Give me your input.